Hi, this is Dave Kelly, and this is the Man Shit Podcast, where we interview all sorts of interesting people, giving clues for men to be better men. Today's a throwback episode to 2021, when I interviewed my good friend Warren Nicholls from the Gold Coast. Warren has completed 8 Ironman races and 16 half Ironman races, and at one point he was ranked number 4 in the world for his age. He's an extraordinary guy who's bounced back from many challenges, including an extremely serious crash while training for Ironman. For a few decades now, Warren's led a sales organisation that is one of the largest in Australia of its type, operating in 3 countries and employing over 300 people. He's a father and a grandfather and a ripping all-round good guy. Enjoy the episode. So, Warren Nicholls, my good friend from Australia, I'm going to give you just an intro to this great man. Warren's 57 years old. He's a father of 3 and a grandparent of 1. And I know from Warren, ever since I've known this man, he has been someone who leads the Team Nicholls. He's a man who loves his family. There's no question about that. And that is obvious and evident in the way that he presents himself, the way he lives his life. He's based on the Gold Coast. We're seeing the Gold Coast, some of the Gold Coast skyline behind him there from his office. He's the CEO and major shareholder of an organisation named Aida Sales and Marketing. His Aida business operates in 3 countries and employs over 300 people. And it conducts outsourced direct sales solutions for non-profits, telcos, energy, and credit card clients. Warren loves to travel. He's fiercely loyal and passionate about his family, as I just mentioned, and he's an accomplished Ironman triathlete, as I mentioned in my preview. He's done 8 Ironman, which puts him in probably, the point-something percentage of all people who have ever done Ironman have done multiple Ironmans, and Warren's done 8. He's done 16 half Ironman races, and at one time he was ranked 4th in the world for his age. This guy's a high flyer. After having a serious bike crash 3 years ago, breaking his back and neck, he's now focused on his business and the next stage of his life. So welcome, Warren, my friend. It's great to talk to you.
Thanks, Dave. Mate, thanks for the introduction. It sounds gave me goosebumps just listening to that. It sounds like I'm a real hitter there, which is great.
I'd love to meet that guy, you were thinking, yeah.
Absolutely. Sounds like a great guy.
So out of this talk, Warren, I was I'm in Istanbul at the moment. You're in Southport on the Gold Coast in Australia. One of the most beautiful places you could put. People say to me here, I've been traveling a bit, and they say, do you want to go to the beach? And I say, let's go to the beach and just let's do whatever. Oh, the water's so great and the sand's so great. And I'm thinking, I've lived on the Gold Coast, which is where you're getting world-class beaches. And so that's where Warren is right now. And that's where we met. When we met, I actually met Warren, and I was I was afraid when I first met him because he was introduced to me. There's Warren. Warren's done 7 Ironman. And I was starting in an Ironman training group. And they said, there he is over there. That's Warren. He's done 7. And I'm like, oh, God, I've got to stay away from that dude. He's mega. He's way up there. As I got into this group and got in training, I thought, no, he's the guy I do want to be with, because your energy, your love, your infectious love for the sport, but also for the commitment and the process of Ironman was so inspiring to me. And I just see that that's the way you are. It wasn't just a show. It wasn't just something you put on when you put on your cycling gear, you put on that sort of persona. That is how you strike me. And I'd really love to explore today as we chat, how has that affected Ironman preparation as a view to the rest of your life, and also the way in which you've run your organisation. So, but you've done 8 Ironman. What was that experience and that period of your life like, preparing, competing, and all the other stuff that goes on to get yourself ready for an Ironman?
I was great, Dave. Thanks. And thanks. I'm really excited to be part of Manship, which is awesome. I started watching the Ironman races back in the late 1970s when Ironman first started in Kona, Hawaii. And I used to watch it on the Wild Water Sports every year. And when I was a teenager growing up, I said, this is really cool, and I've got to do one day. And as it was, I put it off about 30 years and decided to do one before I was 50. It was my first goal. And at 48, I started training for one, didn't know what I was doing, and just wanted to finish and complete a race. And went to Cairns. The first Ironman I did was in Cairns up in far north Queensland. Didn't know what I was doing, how I was going to do it. I'd done plenty of training, so I knew I was fairly fit. but just went about doing it and got it done. And I think it was 13 hours and 7 minutes, which, it wasn't that quick, but you got 17 hours to finish, so you've always got plenty of time. I think the biggest thing about it was the physical and mental challenge, and that was the thing that really drove me. I was probably 20 kilos overweight at the time, and even though I kept fit throughout my life and, exercised quite often, I used to eat too much and drink too much, and as a result, I was carrying a bit of weight. And part of it was getting fit for my 50th, and the other part was knocking one of these races off and experiencing an Ironman before I was 50. So it was awesome.
Mm-hmm. Wow. What's the competitive nature of 50-year-olds in Ironman?
Well, it's funny that probably the most competitive age group is probably 40 to 45, and that's where often guys, men and women, have had a family, they've experienced business, some level of business success, or they've always had a bit of success in their life, and then they get to the stage where the kids are a bit older and they want to do something more for themselves. So the 40 to 45, 45 to 50, and even 50 to 55 year age groups, very, very competitive. In fact, most of the largest bank of entrants per age category are in those categories. So it's very, very competitive and, really, really interesting. And interesting enough, too, when I studied it after a while, the average income earning person of it who completes an Ironman is $120,000 US.
Wow.
So usually they're driven people, they're fairly successful or very successful, a lot of white collar, a lot of doctors, a lot of lawyers, a lot of dentists and so forth, and the occasional direct salesperson.
Part of the reason I asked that is that our podcast now, the whole Manship project is facing out towards men, and it's basically where guys are perhaps they're having, or they will have challenges in their life in these different areas. And one of those challenges is, I believe, is that as we get older, our bodies can slow down, our metabolism slows down, we maybe put on weight, maybe even mentally we're not as sharp as we were. But there's always a way back, isn't there? And it's probably surprising to the majority of people out there that you mean to say 40-year-olds are stumping up in the biggest numbers to commit to an event like the Ironman, which is a massive event to prepare for, but it's also a big event to actually go through and all the emotions and the physical challenges. But there's always a way in which we can move up our life wherever we are. Would you agree with that, Woz?
Oh, absolutely. I think not only that, Dave, the Ironman itself, as you know, and maybe some of the guys who are listening don't know, it's a 3.8 kilometre swim. It's a 180 kilometre bike ride. Then you run a marathon, so 42.2 kilometres. It's a bloody long way. But the amazing thing is, each year the age groups are getting faster and faster and faster and faster and faster. So as more people participate and more people can see the next level, I know when I did one, I wanted to do another one to see if I could do it faster. And then I think it was 6 months later, I did another one and I beat my time by an hour and a quarter. And then 6 weeks later, I did another one and I beat it by another hour. And all of a sudden you get this, you can just not just finish one, you get so motivated and so in tune that you want to start racing them and get better and better and better. And, the weight comes off, you get fitter and stronger. One of the most amazing things is, even at 48, 50, when I was carrying extra weight, I was amazed at how my body responded. It's amazing what you can do if you put your mind to it. Your body has way more capacity and capability than often our minds let us. And that's one of the big things I learned, is that we have so much potential and you can go faster and faster and faster. And 2 years later, I knocked 3 hours off my time. And the only difference was I got a coach and I did some serious training. I lost some more weight, but I got better and better at what I was doing. And it was very inspiring, to the stage where it became a little bit addictive, because you're achieving and you're getting stronger and stronger, both physically and mentally. Yeah. And it's very empowering. And along with that, all the endorphins of training and hanging out with your mates and then pushing yourselves and pushing your limits is really, really, really gets its own legs.
Yeah, yeah. Do you think that to some extent the challenge of Ironman it's a mental challenge?
Oh, absolutely. It's way more mental than physical. Mm-hmm. In an Ironman race, you're allowed to race. You have to finish within 17 hours. And you can almost walk an Ironman in 17 hours. Time is not the issue. It's mainly, I think it's at least 80% mental. Once you're fit enough, if you've done a certain amount of training, the battle is always mental. The battle is definitely mental. And the more training you do and the fitter you become, the more stronger you are and more belief you have mentally, and that allows you to push harder and go faster. It's a mental game, though. Like most things in life, it's mental.
Yeah. So in that sense, do you think that, one of the questions I had here was, do you think that anyone could do an Ironman? What do you think?
I get asked that all the time, mate. It's because some people think, it's just too much. It's too long. It's too far. It's too hard. And it's not. I think if you're able-bodied, obviously there's people who physically don't have, and maybe incapacitated or disabled in some way, and they would struggle. But if you're capable and able, and you haven't got any restrictions on your movement, you can teach yourself to swim. You can go get a good coach and learn how to swim. You can ride a bicycle. Most people in the world can ride a bicycle. Most people in the world could ride a bicycle tomorrow if they gave themselves a certain amount of time to either get back on the saddle or take the time. Most people can walk. Most people can run. So really it's the swimming, running and riding.
Yeah. And
the better you become at those three disciplines, the easier and faster you'll become. And so, yeah, absolutely. There's the majority of people in the world. There's a 92-year-old Japanese guy, the oldest Ironman finisher. 16 hours and 52 minutes. He was 92.
Wow.
There's a nun in America, I forget her name, but she was 85 to 90 who raced Ironman as an 89-year-old nun. Yeah. Give me a break, who can't finish one? Of course it's capable, right?
Yeah, and she's a multiple Ironman finisher.
Yeah, I forget her name. It may come to me before the end of the podcast today, but she's quite inspiring. There's people now in their 70s and 80s who are racing their mates.
Yeah.
So you can't tell me a guy in their 30s or 40s or 50s, if they really want to do one, they can do one. It's just a matter of time, effort and commitment.
So for anyone who's listening, jump on and do some searching yourself on YouTube. You'll see some of the most inspiring people that simply commit to this task of completing an Ironman, and it really is incredible, isn't it? What you see there.
There's a really good book too, Dave. There's I read a book when I first started racing. It was called 17 Hours to Glory, and it's about 4 or 5 pages, maybe 8 pages per chapter, and it's about these individuals with, whether they had a disabled son they were pushing. There's people who have towed their disabled son in a boat with a harness on, then strapped into his bicycle and like a trolley format and rode 180 kilometres and then pushed him and he finished within 17 hours. Of course people can do it, right? But there's some inspiring stories, and everyone obviously has their own journey as well.
Yes, yeah. Well, I think that's Dick and Dick Hoyt and his son.
Hoyt, that's right.
The Hoyts, and they complete. I mean, it is phenomenal because you hear that and think, how does that work? How's that work? And then when I saw the first footage of him, I mean, this is stuff where you start crying and you think, what am I complaining about? I'm able-bodied. I've got facilities. I'm here. I'm living my life. And then you watch the vision of Dick Hoyt swimming 3.8 kilometres with a harness around him and a rope coming back and an inflatable raft that his son is sitting in, his son has cerebral palsy. One of my first cousins has cerebral palsy. He's a great guy, Shane Kelly. For some reason, we either bump into each other or I go and seek him out when I'm in Melbourne, in Australia, and we go and I catch up with him. Shane's caught in a body that belies his mental capabilities. Shane, university, has been a journalist for Australian newspapers, and so much capacity there. Anyway, Dick Hoyt's son also has cerebral palsy, and you look and think, what's going on? This guy's towing his son, and then he gets them out of into a chair, which is a front-facing chair. Into a bike, and he pedals. It's like a tandem bike, but his son's sitting at the front for 180 kilometres, and then he pushes him.
That's incredible.
Sometimes we need those things to just give us ourselves a slap across the chops, a slap across the face, and say, "Hey, wake up to yourself. You've got much more potential than what you're saying that you've got."
It's a really good story to Google and read too. But one year, I remember Dick Hoyt, he missed the swim cutoff. It's a 2.4 mile swim or a 3.8 kilometre swim. And that happened that day he was at the Ironman World Championships. The tide was going out. and he got dragged out to sea by his son's boat that he was trying to tow. It was physically impossible that day because the tide was going out. That he swam out okay, but he couldn't come back.
Wow!
And was an out and back course. So, as you say, there's so many inspiring stories, and it sort of makes your own little journey sometimes pale into insignificance.
Yeah. So the process of completing an Ironman, and I've done an Ironman, like you've done 8, but the process is it varies a lot, doesn't it, in terms of training and in terms of different coaching philosophies around minimalist training. Sometimes, and this is probably conceivable now, people can realise with indoor training and home gyms and whatever, but you can do a lot of your prep on your bike on a wind trainer and do it very efficiently indoors. And then I've heard of people who don't even do much of their running on the road. They do it on a treadmill. So there's really efficient practices that are being used by coaches all over the world, isn't it, to prepare people in minimum time? Because the type of person you're talking about, and there'll be listeners on this on our podcast that they think, well, where do I have the time? I think in our because we were training together in the prep for my Ironman, and I think our maximum load of training was the peak week was about 18 hours. So that's just training. That's on the job. On the training, that's not before all the stuff you've got to do beforehand, including getting to bed early. It's not all the stuff that takes place afterwards. That was 18 hours of training that week, and it's like, well, that's most definitely a second job. So I think
it's a lot of hours. I think I've seen training programs, Dave, like you said, that 12 or 13 hours a week you can get an Ironman done.
Yeah,
I think my heaviest week of training was about 23 hours.
Yeah, well,
and as you know, our coach, he was from the old school. He believed in distance and miles.
Yeah,
and and volume. I think many people now are thinking that maybe you can a lot more quality work rather than the long distance stuff.
Yeah.
But the thing I liked about our long training that we did, I knew every time I got out there to race, I had the distance in my legs. I just knew because I've done so many 150-kilometre rides or so many 200-kilometre rides that distance wasn't going to be a problem. It's going to be on how my nutrition was for the day, how my mentality was, how the conditions were, the weather conditions, and so forth. So I think you're right though. There is a lot of different philosophies, and you can buy dozens and dozens of books on training and different training mentalities. Mm-hmm. One of the big things in the Ironman world now is that a lot of the professional triathletes who have done Olympic distance races and the shorter distance are now, as they're getting older, they're moving up to half Ironman races and full Ironman races. And the big quest right now is, can someone break the 7-hour barrier? Mm-hmm. It used to be a 9-hour barrier, then it was an 8-hour barrier. Now they're talking about, Kristen Blumenfeld, who's a Norwegian Olympic distance racer and hard as nails. He was talking on Instagram a little while ago about someone will break the 7-hour barrier, which is just quite incredible. Yeah, I think the record now is like 7 hours 23 or something like that. So everyone's got their target on really shrinking. And you've got technology, you've got different bike technologies and aero suits and all those things that help. But people believe they can race it now because it's a lot of it's mental, right?
What's the breakdown on the bike? How long's the average speed on the bike?
Yeah, on the elite guys. The elite guys are riding 4 hours 10, 4 hours 20 at Kona, which is probably over 40 kilometres an hour, which is just incredible. And that's after they swim 3.8 kilometres. It's quite amazing. Then they'll hop off and run a 2 hour 35 or a 2 hour 40 marathon, which is just quite amazing.
Wow, it's certainly an inspiring business. To me, there's one thing that somehow in the process, I look at Ironman triathletes and think, these are some of the most committed and focused and gifted, hardworking athletes on the planet, but they're not rewarded in the same way that financially. There's not big prize money for those guys winning those races are making money for sure, but there's not the amount of money in the sport, is there? What do you think that is? I think it's something to do with the fact that it's hard to attract the crowd because it's all about eyeballs. If you're talking about in the US, I've been living in the US, and the big sports there, baseball, basketball, American football, for example, ice hockey, they're all fairly short, focused, and you can watch it at home. You can keep in touch with the game while you're cooking dinner or you're doing whatever, or you're sitting there. It's maybe 2 hours. Ironman, it's hard to get someone's attention, isn't it, for 7 hours, 8 hours, 9 hours?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the TV audience is one thing. Is it where you got a 1 or 2 hour game on TV? You can play a series with 20 or 30 games over the course of the season. With Ironman, you can probably race 3 or 4 if you're elite. They do take a lot out of you. I think it's the TV and sponsorship as well that drives a lot of the income from the sports, and it's catching up. They just started a whole new pro series where the pro athletes are running basically their own union or their own group now, promoting themselves and increasing the prize money. And I think the largest race is about $100,000 first prize now, which is not a lot in comparison to golf or tennis or the NFL or those, but it's definitely improving. And I think sponsorship and merchandise and things like that, I don't think that it's at the same level, which sort of limits the income availability.
Yeah. You're a powerful man, Warren. And when we get to talking about Ironman, the energy was reverberating out, and your African mask in the background there fell off the wall.
It did. Yeah, it's there's some serious vibes going on, Dave. Absolutely. It's I loved it. It was a big part of my life for about 5 years, and it became part of my persona. Yeah. And I probably became a little bit obsessive at the end, but I really enjoyed that big phase of my life, and I have very fond memories. I've still got all my plaques and medals and things, and often I reflect back on those days and how good I felt during those races too, and being able to do something that most people won't ever try or couldn't do. That was a big appeal too. Like once you've done one, it's like a little badge of honor. I got my Ironman tattoo, and I wear it with pride around the place, and people ask you about it. Most people can do one. Yeah. Most people don't decide to do one, don't want to do one, but it sort of goes before you a little bit. Being able to do those sort of races, and it gives you a lot of mental strength too. That's the thing I sort of gained out. I didn't realise when I did my first Ironman or second or third or whatever, but after I've done a few, it gave you have unshakable belief in yourself. You can go to a very, 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 very dark place, and you can compete and struggle and come through and win or achieve, and that carries with you for the rest of your life. And that's something I talk to people at work about sometimes. Is it's about building that inner belief and that unshakable belief in yourself to achieve something great. And when you have that, you're not bulletproof, you're not unshakable forever, but it does give you a different level of confidence and self-belief that you can punch through things when challenges in life come up or challenges in business come up. You know that you can accept the challenge, and compete with the challenge and come through it. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things I learned over those years when I was racing is you do have more capability. You are stronger than you think you are, and you've proven it to yourself quite a few times now. So, you have that inner confidence and inner strength.
It's wonderful. Yeah, it's wonderful. I want to touch on the accident that you had in a little bit, but extending on the conversation, and what you've just said is a great segue and a great introduction to the other part of the topic here is that, mindset is everything, isn't it? And I think it's so relevant in this game of Ironman Triathlon or any of these endurance sports. So can you talk a little bit about how the preparation and the confidence that you've got, have you become a better businessman as a result of having that unshakable confidence you were just talking about?
Well, I think there's a few things. I'm a different person than I was when I first started racing. I probably work less hours when I was training 25 hours a week and travelling. And I raced in Malaysia, I raced in Austria. I used it as my annual holiday to go and have a race overseas and had some great experiences in New Zealand and Malaysia, as I mentioned. And I think that the difference is that I probably became a little bit more time effective and better at time management. Where I think I improved greatly was my mental clarity. When you are fit and you're strong and you're achieving things and your body's efficient and you're motivated and you're excited, you have a different level of energy. My energy levels were far greater when I was fit than when I wasn't fit. I think also that people see you differently. They understand that not just because you're an Ironman racer, but they know you're fit. They know you've got some goals. They know you're committed. The fact that you're fit and lean and strong, you make clear decisions. You have confidence in the decisions you make. Have great level of energy. When challenges come, I didn't struggle with the challenges like I had in the past. I became very clinical with my decision making. I shook up or shaken like I did in the past because I had that level of confidence. And I think people just treat you differently as well.
Do you think that I know that amongst the Ironman community, when you get talking to different personalities, you kind of realise there's a lot of respect given for those who have done and repeatedly done, competed in multiple Ironmans, for example. There's a lot of respect for those we give those people. Do you think that your way of being has become apparent to other people in your business world, where they kind of think there's something different about that guy? Is there, are they? Yeah. Do you think that as you've come up across maybe even new people, and they've sort of thought there's something behind this guy? What is it that's making him tick? And maybe through the course of discussion, it comes out, hey, well, I'm an Ironman, and that's maybe the missing piece of information they weren't aware of.
Yeah, I don't want it to sound too corny either. Like you're not the superhero like a Marvel comic character when you walk into a room with wings and a mask on. Yeah. But you do carry yourself very differently, and people at work definitely saw. I've had many comments. People, oh yeah, it's okay for you. You've done an Ironman before. You know how to get through those situations.
Right.
I've heard that maybe 100 times, maybe more than 100 times. Wow. Absolutely. And people think that you're totally different than everybody else because you've done one or two of these races. And it's a crock, right? It's not true. That's just they didn't understand or whatever else. We're dealing with clients. I've got clients who have done an Ironman race who I spoke to about it one day. What do you do to keep fit? Just building a relationship with your clients. And he told me he's done a few triathlons and a few Ironman races. And all of a sudden, I'd love to do. I've always wanted to do one of those. Listen, let me send you some training programs. I've got a few books I can send you. So in case there's this little community, and then let me know if I can help. I had a really good client over in New Zealand, Howard Smith. He was working for Meridian Energy, a really great guy. I worked with him in Australia, and then fortunately I ran into him in New Zealand. I started working with him, doing some outsourced sales solutions for him in Wellington and through the North Island. And he and I were talking about Ironman one day, and he said, I've always wanted to do one. So I introduced him to Mark Aldous, our coach. So Mark never met each other until Howard went up and they communicated via email and training programs, and Howard went and trained by himself all through winter in New Zealand, which can be really cold. And he finished his Ironman, I think it was like 14 or 15 hours, a long time. And it almost killed him, he said, when he did it. And then next year he won a Kona slot through the lottery, and he raced Kona the next year. And I've been trying to bloody qualify for that race for too many years. And here Howard was, and he went and raced Kona the next year and made a family holiday out of it. He only did 2 races, but that was just through common people having a common goal and helping each other out and so forth. So there's a lot of that around as well, for sure.
There's a lot of community. I know that I've got on my dating profile, I've got a photograph. Wow. I've got a photograph of me with our other mate, Cameron Hardiman. We did the Cairns Ironman together, and I looked like this. I didn't have a beard, but I looked like this thin little rake. And I'm there with Cam. I mean, he's holding me up at the end of the race. And someone recently asked me about that. They said, "What's this?" And I said, "Well, that was my." They said, "Oh, you look very different." I started that race at 72 kilograms. I mean, I was like thin then, and I had no belly fat whatsoever. I was just lean. And I finished the race 6 kilograms lighter. 6 kilograms. That was, what's that, 8% of my body weight just left somewhere on those 180.
That's incredible. And funny you should say, Cam, because I got a text from him a few minutes ago. I said, I'm going to have a podcast on man shit, and he wished us both good luck and gave us a thumbs up. And only a few weeks ago, I had a coffee with him, and another great guy too. And the camaraderie you have in your training in a group, Cam and Ben and all the guys we used to race with and train with. It's a really great spirit, and everyone has their own journey. And that wasn't Cam's best race. He was extremely fit at the time, and he didn't have a great day out. And I know he was very disappointed with it, but I think it was his second or third that he did it. And but yeah, I was talking to Cam only a few weeks ago and had a coffee with him, and it's good to catch up.
You do meet and become. There's something in this, and cyclists know this as well, because we've both been long-term cyclists. But there's something in the struggle and the pain of being. Well, this is an individual sport. However, you can't really do it as an individual. You need support, just by virtue. You need a support team. People do it as it okay, but you and I, we need support from our family, and our partner, etc. But also our training group gives a huge amount of support. And there's something weird, isn't there? The bond that grows as you suffer. And cyclists often talk about this because, there's so many great cyclists who've retired or lived on the Gold Coast. Robbie McEwen's one of them, for example. And there's all this talk when you get in the community of suffering together and growing closer together. But there is something in that, isn't it? When you're there, you're chasing your goal, you're chasing a personal goal. You're doing it in the context of a larger group. And there really is something that bonds are built at times like that, aren't they? With brothers and sisters as we're struggling through that physical challenge, and it's because it's a mental challenge as well. And something kind of welds those people together. Maybe we're all just weird. They're the weirdos over there. But there's something.
It's amazing, mate. I think you're right. Even if you're cycling out, Crumman Valley, all those places and you have a puncture.
Yeah.
Many cyclists will stop and help you fix your bike.
Yeah.
You're all on a common journey, having a common goal, doing a similar thing.
Yeah.
And if you come off your bike or you have an accident or your wheel's broken or you need some help, there's always people around you. And even one step further, when you have your training group, we used to go out there, 5 in the morning, we'd start riding, meet at 10 to 5, and then we'd go out and raid, a few days a week. We'd have really, really hard sessions where you'd really increase your cardiovascular capability, and then you'd be challenged. Some guys would feel better on some days than others, and you'd be trying to hurt your mate, trying to get him to blow a little bit harder than you were, and you'd be either dragging him back, or he'd be dragging you back from a training ride, drafting and so forth, and and then you sit down and have a coffee afterwards and talk about your next race or your next goal or whatever else, and you build a real strong camaraderie. And I think a lot of it's got to do with they're like-minded people doing a like-minded same sort of concept of things.
Yep.
And some of them were at a high level, some were at a medium level, and some were doing their first or maybe at a low level. But you had a common respect there that they'd done the amount of training that you'd done, and that they had a certain amount of character and a certain amount of strength about their will that set them aside from some other people. And without being too corny about it, then you go to a race where there's 1,000 or 2,000 people. And I raced in Austria. It was a beach start in a lake, freshwater lake. 1,500 people entered the water together, and we all raced out. 1.5 kilometres out in the middle of this bloody lake, and all the people channeled into one little area, and it was like a washing machine out there. But you had this mutual respect from people where you knew that everyone on the start line had done a similar amount of training to you, had similar sort of goals, and there's a camaraderie there that's quite powerful. And I remember in Austria I was racing, and I couldn't speak German, I couldn't speak Austrian, and I was in this group of. I rode a 504 bike that day. It was probably the best bike ride I've ever done for 180 kilometres. And I was in this group, and you're not allowed to draft. You've got to keep, I think it was 10 metres or 12 metres apart, so you can't get any wind assistance from a person in front of you. And I was with a bunch of Austrians and Germans, and they were big, strong men. And there's 8 of us who rode around all day together. I couldn't speak a word of German. All we could do was nod and grunt.
Yeah.
And we rode the whole day together, and we all hopped off in the transition to run together. Yeah. And no one said a word. We just nodded and just a bit wink, wink, nudge, nudge, and away we went. And it was I got goosebumps thinking about it, because it was bloody life-changing, because you knew that you'd busted your ass, excuse my language. Yeah. You'd put it all out there on the line. You'd done it with a bunch of other blokes who had a similar capability, and you had this mutual respect and mutual understanding that didn't need words. It was quite amazing. And I still look back on that race as probably one of the best races I've ever done. It was really, really good fun.
Yeah. Certainly that effort and that commitment to yourself and also to the cause it transcends language, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And you can see that. Language. You can see that. Look at the Olympics, Dave. Not just triathlon or Ironman, but look at the Olympics when they finish a marathon or a group race, and many different countries coming together. They can't speak the same language, and you can just see them that they're hugging each other, picking themselves off the ground, or helping each other, or just high fiving, or whatever else at the end of a grueling event. So absolutely, there's a lot in that.
I love this discussion. I mean, it's really cutting to the central core of what my motivation was when I conceived this idea of the Manship Project, which was as men are finding if they're finding difficulties in their life in the areas of love and relationships, money, drugs and alcohol problems that come, and also our mind and body fitness and strength. If we're finding difficulties in those areas, then we can get back on track. You're motivating me. I'm starting to think, geez, maybe I need to
starting to get motivated again.
And I have been thinking about that as well, about what I want to do next physically, what the next challenge is. But we can always be motivated when we come into a community that has inspiring people because of their experiences. And as they share that, there will be people jump on this and say, man, I'm gonna lift my game. I'm gonna get in and I'm gonna do an Ironman, for example. Or I'm gonna just get in and start respecting myself and walking every day and doing what I've been talking about doing. I'm actually going to do it now in practice. This is really the heart of what we're talking about, and I'm really inspired by. I mean, I've always been inspired by you as a man, and as an athlete, and it's a great story. So thanks.
I think Dave. The other thing is, you and I met. We talked about Manship. I think when you were in the LA about a year ago, and I didn't know what it was, and I went to the website and it was just starting up, and I think you had your first event planned, and what a bloody great idea, because blokes don't talk about their shit, right? That's fact.
Yeah.
I'm 57. I'm very different than I was when I was 52.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very different than I was when I was 45.
Yeah.
I was very different than I was when I was 30. If you told 30-year-old Warren what he knows now, God help him, one, he wouldn't want to go through it. We've had marital issues. We've had birth of children. We've funded our children through college or university. We've provided for our families. We've had marital challenges. We've had friendship issues. We've had parents die. We've had people we know and love get sick and die. I've drunk too much. I've had an unhealthy lifestyle. I haven't eaten well all the time. I've had my own. Everyone has their own challenges, and it's very hard as a strong male to give up and chat about that stuff openly without feeling vulnerable or feeling even a bit foolish. And I still don't do it very well. But if we can inspire each other and stand by each other, I was talking to a guy the other night, a really good mate of mine, his friend. He had a heart attack at 39, had a pacemaker put in. He lost his job. His dad died, and within 3 months, then another month later, his cousin died.
Oh.
And he had to come back. He lost his job in Singapore, had to come back to Australia. And the poor bastard, I met him 3 weeks ago. And I didn't know him, but his mates couldn't get through to him.
Yeah.
Because he's too proud to talk to his mates. And I just said, listen, champ, I don't know you from a bar of soap. Yeah. I don't know you from a bar of soap, but I understand a little bit that you've had a really rough 12 months. I said, and it sucks. And nothing can make that go away. You have to deal with it. But never feel like you're alone. I'll give you my phone number. You never have to ring me. But if you need a hand or you need to have a chat or need to talk something through. Now, we had been at a function and we had a few drinks and we're all having a good time. And he looked at me and you could see in his eyes he was in pain. And I said, mate, the only advice I can give you, and I can't walk in your shoes, I didn't experience those things, is that how long are we going to live for? You're going to live to your 80 or 90 or 100 or whatever. That last 12 months of your life is only 2 or 3% of your life. And just try to departmentalize that or capture it and say, yeah, that was horrible. But the other 97% can be fun and can be fantastic and you can live productively and be happy.
Yeah.
And it's easy to say if you're in the middle of it. But and it cut through. He said, you know what? I'm a mathematics guy. That made a lot of sense to me. Yeah. I love my maths and I love my fractions. And that resonated. And about 2 hours later, his wife came up and said, you know what? I don't know what happened, but you just got through to him. This 2% thing really resonated with him.
Wow.
And I could have easily not said, I didn't want to embarrass him. I had nothing much to give him except that, hey, mate, you're not alone. In 1 year, I broke my neck and broke my back in that bloody accident. My dad died. I nursed him through a cancer. I got a massive tax bill, which I wasn't expecting. And I had some marital issues. And my head at that time, I was going to bloody explode.
Yeah.
But I knew that it would pass, right? And when you start talking about man shit, and when we had that catch up a few months ago on the Gold Coast, that's inspired me to get involved, because it's so bloody true and so real.
So real. Yeah. Mate, let's just jump on. I want to talk to you about and ask you about your accident. Run us through what happened. Run us through.
I was actually training for my 9th Ironman, Dave, at the time, and we were about 3 weeks out from a race.
Yeah.
I just come back from a fundraising ride. We raised $35,000 for a venture for a bed for a hospital where my dad was nursed in his last days, and they're pretty underfunded. So we just got back, and I think we rode 674 kilometres in 4 days. And I rode with my triathlon mates. We got back on Tuesday, and I went out on a ride on Saturday, and we were obviously fit because we just raced this bloody race or rode this ride. And I was coming back down a very steep hill at the back of the Gold Coast where we live, and I under my own, I was a little bit ahead of my friends. I was trying to race in front of ahead of them and get back to the coffee shop first. And I was going down a very steep hill, and I hit a bump at the bottom of the hill, and I lost control of the bike under my own. Is totally related to myself. I didn't have any accident with the bike or a car or anything, and I fell off. My front wheel locked, and I went over the handlebars, and I landed on my head, and I broke my collarbone. I broke my neck in 2 places. I broke 5 ribs, and I broke my back in 5 places, and very, very sick I was in hospital for 11 days, and it really changed my life. That was basically the end of my Ironman racing, and I tore 2 of the 3 hamstring tendons off the back of my butt, and that's probably the biggest single thing left now from the accident, that they can't reattach them after. They can reattach them after a week or 2, but after the muscle dies and the muscle shrinks, it gets covered in fat. And basically, I've got a lump of muscle in my back of my leg, which is not attached anymore, and it doesn't allow me to run. So that was basically the end of it.
You were in such bad shape that you weren't able to even be aware that had occurred.
Well, I tried to stand up at the time. I didn't. I was winded with the ribs and the bloody collarbone. It was quite painful. But and the morphine, I think too. That the morphine's that is one way to get over. To not be lucid with the world. But I didn't realise how sick I was. My conference starting on the Wednesday, and I actually did the opening address. I came off on Saturday morning. I did the opening address from a hospital bed. On FaceTime, so we opened the conference, but I was actually back with the neck brace on. But it was bloody hard times. Like it was, when you're racing and you're strong and you're fit, you think you're not infallible. But when something like that happens, it really challenges who you are and the mental side of and your mental strength for sure.
So that has pretty much put an end to your racing career, but has it put an end to everything physical for you?
No, not at all. No, I did a half Ironman last year. I was very unfit. I had to drag my left leg along because after about a kilometre running, the muscle is overused and I can't run. But I was probably 10 kilos over my race weight. But I went up the Cairns and did a half Ironman, and I think I took about 2 hours longer than my best time, or maybe a bit 2.5 hours longer. But I really wanted to go back and do one. I had this unfinished business where I used to be a decent racer and I used to be competitive. And when I hurt myself, it hurt my soul and hurt my attitude to the stage where I can still do one, and I'm going to go back and do a half with a view of maybe doing a full one day if I want to go back and do another full. But I needed to go back and just validate myself again and say no. I still got the mentality. I'm still physically able to do one. I may not be as fast. I may not be. My injuries may prevent me from racing at the level I used to. But to go back and do one, it actually gave me. I felt great. I destroyed myself doing it because I wasn't that fit. But it did a world of good for my brain and my self-esteem, and my attitude for sure.
Yeah. So where to from here? Is there any way of? Is there any technological, medical innovations coming along where you might be able to reattach that hamstring?
Apparently, you can go over to Germany. There's a guy in Germany, a friend of mine knows a sports physician in Germany who specialises in it. The challenge is that you have to have your leg in a sling up behind you for 9 months, and they loosen that. They reattach, and then I think it's about a centimetre a week. They release it down. So whether you want to go back and take 9 months from rehabilitation to do that to get back, I can walk around, I can jog over. I can do a couple of kilometre jog. I still ride my bike 3 or 4 times a week. I can still swim.
Yeah,
I'm sort of focusing on other things I can do and the next stage of my life now. At 57 too, do I need to do another Ironman? Do I need to do another half Ironman?
Yeah.
Would I like to? It'd be nice to, but there's other things I want to do as well. I want to go live overseas for 3 to 6 months next year and live there and hopefully do some business back here. Awesome. As you mentioned before, I have one grandson. He's 20 months. My daughter's pregnant with twins, and my son and his wife are pregnant again now too. So I'll have 4 grandchildren by April next year.
Wow.
So I'm sort of, I get goosebumps just thinking about that. That's really important to me. I've set up a little education fund for my grandchildren, so I can help them with their education or their school books or their uniforms, and really passionate about looking after my family and building that intergenerational wealth as well. So getting back on the tools of work, really focusing on it. Last year we opened up a business in South Africa. It hasn't been fantastic recently with the coronavirus and the struggles worldwide that we've all faced, but really focusing on some work. I really want to travel a lot more. I love, like yourself, I'm really envious of you. I've been over in Istanbul today, and last week, I forget where you were last week, and the week before that you were in Spain. I really want to travel, and that's really a passion of mine. Make some great money, and set my family up and look after my kids and my grandkids. That really drives me at the moment. So, I think the coronavirus has probably set me back 3 years in my personal financial goals.
Right.
We took a big hit, and we're rebuilding now. But and that's affected millions of people around the world, as we know. So, I think just redefining those goals and getting motivated and putting time and effort into other things as well, which is really important.
Yes. Yeah. So, just briefly towards the end now, can you talk about your business, the teamwork required to run a business where you've got 300 employees? I can't relate to that. I have to be honest. I can't relate to what would be involved in that. But clearly, you're probably not identifying and touching every one of those 300. But you must have developed management teams to then manage the greater numbers. To what extent have those skills increased in your life as you've gone along? And because you seem pretty comfortable with that idea of running a large organisation, that doesn't happen overnight.
No, thanks, mate. And I stumbled across this role back in 2009 with a good mate of ours, Paul Collis. Paul started the Aida business and left about 5 years after I started. And we were in Australia. We had probably 100 people working with us, and then we opened up New Zealand, and we put 80 or 100 people in the market over there, and built a head office over there and head office here. And then I met a fellow 3 years ago who was South African, and we didn't have any competition in that market. There was a great need there for the business. So why don't we go to South Africa and open up there? It was a bloody good idea at the time. And I think the thing, I've got about 24 managers across Australia and New Zealand and South Africa, and they all run teams of 10 to 12 people. We have some subcontracted partners, and we have probably 50% of people directly employed. I think having good managers in each of those markets, managing the client relationships and the key business relationships with the sales partners and the sales managers is really key. Having good infrastructure and having good technology is really important, particularly across, we can be working, I think in 20 hours out of the 24 hours a day, we've got someone selling something to somebody. Wow. We're working. So, when we first opened in South Africa, I was working probably 16, 17 hours a day. Right. And that's unsustainable, and it's not healthy for a business or myself. Yep. So, managing people and empowering people on a local level to pick up the slack and make decisions. The other technologies like WhatsApp, really, really powerful. Email, even though it drives us nuts, it's a great way to communicate and get messages at odd time of days and nights. We have a weekly bulletin, a sales bulletin, where we match up Australian dollars with South African rand and New Zealand dollars. Yep. And we build a point system per sale, which, if you break it all down, generates a certain amount of revenue, and they compete across the 3 countries for the top 5 spots in each division each week.
Oh, wow.
And little things like that where you can use technology to get the message out. Now, in South Africa, they haven't got a lot of email, but they've all got devices. So we send the sales boards now on WhatsApp. They don't come to the office because Johannesburg's got 15 million people, and it's such a big city. It's almost impossible to get to the office every day because of the travel time. So, technology and really good, I think, empowering managers and leadership's probably the biggest single thing. And we're not perfect by a long way. We stumble and fumble along. But if you do enough good things over and over again and empower enough good people and give them an opportunity to grow and be successful financially, that helps build and run the business for sure.
Yeah. Hey, you told me that you had an extended fight with the Australian government with regard to the way in which you had employed people.
Yeah, so we that's been
that
very
to me,
interesting journey.
It seemed you were telling me that, and I'm thinking, God Almighty, you've had to deal with that as well. To me, that's
just settled. We've just settled, Dave. You probably don't know. I haven't talked to you since, but in the Australian market, we use a contracting model for a long time, for 17 years.
Yeah.
And one of the unions in Australia will probably remain nameless at this stage. They didn't like the fact that we were using contractors, self-employed contractors. They would rather us employ people, and that way they get a bigger membership base and a little bit more control from their own point of view. We believed we had good legal advice saying that contracting was the right way to go and a fair way to go. And anyway, they challenged us under the Fair Work Act in Australia and took us to court on behalf of 59 people. And we settled. They originally wanted $70 million for us, which would have...
Was that all?
Yeah, would have sorted me out. And we, after 3 years and about $500,000 in legal fees, we settled about 2 months ago for a small amount. And the amount was probably equal. It was a commercial settlement that probably equal to what it would have cost us to go to the final stage of the court process. So but if you're getting challenged like that, you're in the courts, you've got to do the right thing. And we had some very good legal help and good barristers. But as a small business, just run by a couple of people who are the shareholders, it was a major challenge for us. And but as again, you just got to stand up and aim up and do the right thing and bat it away. And if you're honest and you have integrity and you're doing the right thing, you're not trying to rip people off. Normally that stands you in good stead, and that was a good outcome for us. Frustrating as it was dealing with that for 3 or 4 years. But now most of our people are employed now because of Fair Work, and Australia's got the highest minimum wage in the world. It's got very stringent employment practices, and we were told by Fair Work a few years ago that they probably should be employees. Forget the historical part of it. So we moved to employment about 3 years ago, which has changed our business dramatically. But again, you just got to deal with those things as they're put on your plate. Yeah.
Well, you've certainly had to deal with a lot of things, probably off camera to most people. Maybe they look at you now, and if you're not looking physically great, maybe at the end of the day, and a slight limp or something, they might think, what's the story behind that? But they probably didn't know that you hit a wall coming down a mountain at 70 kilometres an hour, because you neglected to say that in your...
82.6 kilometres an hour.
82.6, and you did hit a wall, didn't you?
No, I hit a tree root at the bottom of a hill down the back of Tomowin. You know Tomowin?
Yeah.
Down the bottom of the hill, and the hill goes down for about 2 kilometres, and down the bottom it levels out, and there's a tree root that's grown under the road, and it's a little bit of a bump.
Okay.
And as a result, my front wheel locked up.
Yeah.
And I went over the head of it. I slid about 70 metres on my head and my back and my shoulder, and it wasn't a great time. I don't remember very much of it, thank God. I remember waking up in hospital and them saying that morphine was a really good idea.
Yeah.
It was a terrible bad time. And I know that how fast I was going because my sports watch tracked the time it was when I fell over or fell off. And it was 82.67 kilometres an hour. So I don't recommend that to anyone. No. It was not a great time. But I was lucky I had all my mates there, so it was really, really good.
Yeah, I was not on that training ride. I missed that day for whatever reason. But I do remember coming into the hospital, and it's a confronting thing and many people have, unfortunately, this is one of the things that happens in life. You come into a circumstance, and I was going to the hospital. I made my way, and then I came into the room, and you were there just with hoses and wires and machinery hooked up, and everyone in that room being very tense, not knowing where that was going. And that's a very confronting experience for friends and family to see. But obviously, you're going through it, and I remember that very clearly, and I want to remind you of that, because you've come a long way in terms of what you've done as a result of that. You've shared, things like, for example, the Fair Work issue that's gone on for a long time, consumed a lot of resources, taken a lot of mental space, and you'd have to say pretty much unnecessarily. You could really come out of that. I could imagine many people would come out being bitter and twisted against being so unfairly targeted, and those things that's more baggage that we can take on and actually slows us down rather than frees us up.
It's hard, David, and you'd be lying to say that it didn't affect you. Whether you've been recovering from the accident and or going through the legal issues there and those legal challenges, and sure, I was kicking stones down the road on the odd day, thinking how bad life was and all the rest of it. But at the end of the day, I was lucky. My family, my wife and my daughters were looking after me during the hospital stay, and I couldn't even wipe my own backside for 3 months. I was on a neck brace, and very bloody humbling. And I had all the help and all the support and I had dozens of visits. From my friends, yourself, many other people who really couldn't do very much except be supported. They would have, if I'd asked them for help, no doubt they would have helped.
Yeah.
But they were just supportive, and they were on standby for me, and they checked in on me. Yeah. I had a really good mate, Sean Keddy. Sean, he'd come around to my place at least once, twice a week and take me to breakfast. I'd hobble out 50 metres across the road. But other than that, I'd be sitting in my lounge chair all bandaged up, and I couldn't move my bloody neck or my arms or my ribs or whatever else. But just the sheer fact that he could take me 50 metres to a cafe, and I could have a coffee and something to eat and get me out of the house and get me out of the environment just kept me fresh. Yeah. And, I was hopefully never too proud to reach out for help when that help was given. And I think that helped keep me strong.
Yeah.
And the legal stuff, you talk about it with your colleagues, you talk to the legal people. I always find if your goals and your plan is strong and motivating for you, you'll overcome the challenges that are sent. Mm-hmm. It's when you're sort of wishy-washy yourself, or you're not quite committed or whatever else, those things can really shake you. And it's very easy to say if after the fact, but if you're honest and you've got integrity and you work hard and you've got some goals and you're passionate about something, normally it'll help you push through some of those darker days and some of those darker issues. And I feel that never more than today. I was talking to somebody last night. One of our managers in Adelaide was having a rough time, and she's second guessing herself, and she's, maybe I've lost my passion, maybe I've lost it, maybe I just can't do it anymore. I said, that's bullshit. You are still the same great person you were 6 months ago, 12 months ago, 2 years ago. Yeah. The fact that your team is on the same level is a reflection on you right now. Do not just second guessing yourself and selling yourself short. You're on a slippery slope, a very slippery slope, and it's not fair. Unless you're done crazy things and you're letting yourself down with poor behaviour. But if you've got the honesty and integrity and the work ethic and the commitment, don't second guess yourself. You may not have a great outcome this time, but just reset the goals and get back on with it. And I know it's very easy to say, but it's really, really important.
Yeah. So as we finish up, I wanted to normally many of the guests I'm having on the podcast are running programs that guys can jump in to get refocused on, whether that's money, relationships, drugs and alcohol, or getting fit and strong in body and mind. In your case, you're running a normal business. But I wanted to ask you, would you do some, just if you provide for us a summary of the top 5 things, whether that's a book, a podcast, a movie that you've seen, the top 5 things, and I'll put this up as part of this podcast, and you can do this afterwards, but The top 5 things which you found for you have made a difference at times when you really needed something to inspire you. Those 2 things. So if you could do that for us, that'd be great.
Fantastic. I'd love to do that, mate.
When we've talked about having a conference, a manship conference in Australia, and I want to do that. I want you to come and share some of your experience. So start working on a pointed, if you haven't got one already, a pointed, powerful presentation where we can go on and inspire guys to live their best life. Would you do that as well?
Mate, I'd love to do that, mate. I'll be the first person to buy a ticket or to come along and book my place for sure. I think it's a great concept, mate, and more power to you, Dave. I really enjoy to be part of it, and I really embrace what you're doing, and I want to support as much as I can, and any way I can help, I'm more than happy to do that. I'll send you my details and maybe the 5 key things, and feel free, anyone on this podcast, feel free to reach out if you think any questions. I'll share my email and my Instagram, and by all means reach out. I'd be very happy to chat and be very interested to talk to many people from around different places around the world too. I think it's we're all on a very similar journey, and be very happy to share and maybe help where I can. Yeah.
So finally, and in that same sense as what you've just said, what does manship mean to you?
I just think it's a great opportunity for guys to share and help each other. Like, I'm not a big sharer or carer. Like, I hold a lot of stuff very close to me. I don't, I'm probably an outward going type person, but my deep, dark, heavy pieces, the struggles that I have, I hold pretty close. And I've seen people self-destruct over those. I've seen them have poor behaviour. I've seen them self-medicate. I've self-medicated myself. And it's bloody sad. Yep. And if I was a little bit more free with my feelings and I could share a little bit more without feeling vulnerable or stupid, I think I would have had a better life, and it would have been easier for me. So I think from manship for me is sharing and caring. We don't need to live each other's pockets. We don't need to be all lovey-dovey and have group hugs. Yep. But having a network where we can share and share experiences and share and care without being judged, I think that's what it means to me. And I think whether it be the functions or the podcasts or getting to know each other or just jumping on a phone or a WhatsApp and having a chat, I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, I think we've all got shit as men, and it's about being open, honest, and authentic. As strong as an ox as you are mentally, physically, and as inspiring as you are, you've had things where you've needed to reach out and grab onto something for inspiration to keep going. And
dozens of times, mate, dozens of times.
And I think this is just the way life is. This is the way that life is. But we do need to, as men, if we want to move on and live a progressive, productive life where we're impacting others and not just living for ourselves, then we need to realise, hey, there's times when we need to bring energy, we need to grab what's available and to help us move us on. And, what you've done today and sharing this has just been wonderful. So I really thank you, Woz.
I love it, mate. It's great to see you, champ, and enjoy Istanbul.
Fantastic. Thanks for that. Cheers, man.
Thanks, Dave. Have a good day, guys.